I, 33 male, went to prison, still provided for my wife, 31 famil, and she repaid me by destroying my family. I never thought my life would end up as one of those stories people read on Reddit and say, no way this really happened. But here I am, 33 years old, 3 kids, a shattered marriage, and a heart I'm still picking up piece by piece. Before 2023, my life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had a wife, a home, 3 beautiful kids, and a job that paid the bills. My wife and I had been together for over 10 years. We met young, survived our 20s together, and built what I honestly believed was a solid family. Sure, we argued, but we always found our way back. Or so I thought. Everything changed the day I got arrested. I'm not proud of what happened. It was a stupid decision made in the wrong place at the wrong time. I won't get into details, but it was a non-violent charge, and I ended up serving time. Sitting in the back of that police car, the only thing I could think about was my family. My kids. My wife. How disappointed they would be. Prison does things to you. It strips away everything that makes you feel human. Your schedule, your freedom, your dignity, it's all gone. The only thing that kept me going was my family. I called home every chance I got. I worked prison jobs, saved up what I could, just to send money home. I knew things were going to be hard for my wife, 3 kids, 1 paycheck, bills piling up, so I sent everything I could. Every letter she sent back told me she was managing. Every phone call reassured me that the kids were fine. She told me she loved me. She told me she couldn't wait for me to come home. I held on to those words like they were oxygen. When my release date came, I walked out of those gates feeling hopeful. Nervous, but hopeful. I expected my kids to run into my arms, my wife to cry happy tears, maybe even a small welcome meal. But the moment I stepped back into my neighborhood, something felt off. People who used to call me brother suddenly couldn't look me in the eye. Neighbors who used to wave at me now avoided me. Even my cousins gave me this weird, sympathetic pity look. I brushed it off at first. Maybe people just needed time to adjust. Maybe they didn't know how to act around me after everything. But then the whispers started. Little comments here and there. She don't deserve what he gave her. Poor guy doesn't even know. I can't believe she did that while he was locked up. I tried to ignore it. I told myself people love drama, that they make up stories to feel better about their own lives. I held on tight to the image I had in my head of my wife, waiting faithfully for me. Then my best friend, my brother since childhood, pulled me aside and said, "Man, we need to talk." I brushed him off at first. I wasn't ready to hear whatever rumors he had picked up. But he insisted. And when I finally agreed to sit down with him, the look in his eyes froze my blood cold. He said, "I tried telling you before. You didn't want to hear it. But now that you're home, you deserve the truth." I felt my stomach turn. He told me things about my wife that didn't feel real. How she started going out more and more. How she spent the money I sent, not on the kids, not on bills, but in clubs. Drinking. Partying. Buying drinks for younger guys. Acting single while I sat behind bars praying for my family. He told me she hooked up with 4 of my friends, including one who'd eaten at my table, held my kids, called me his brother. I told him he was lying. I told him someone must have misinterpreted something. I told him my wife would never do that to me. He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just reached into his pocket and placed a USB drive on the table. He said, "Watch it. If after this you still don't believe me, I'll never bring it up again." I wish I had never pressed play. What I saw on those videos, my wife dancing, grinding, kissing strangers, destroyed something inside me. And the worst part? I recognized the money she was throwing around. My money. The money I sent from prison, so my kids wouldn't starve. I didn't even realize I was crying until the screen blurred. My friend apologized over and over, telling me he didn't want me to find out like this. But the truth is, there's no good way to learn your wife betrayed you while you were locked up trying to hold your family together. When I finally made it back home that night, the house felt different. The walls felt heavy. My kids hugged me, but even then, I could see something in their eyes, uncertainty, confusion, maybe things they didn't know how to explain. That was the night everything inside me shattered. And it was only the beginning. I barely slept the night after watching those videos. Every time I closed my eyes, the images replayed in my head like a movie I didn't want to see. Her laughing, dancing, pouring shots, letting strangers put their hands on her, spending money I sent so my kids could eat. It felt like someone was twisting a knife inside my chest. The next morning, I woke up feeling numb. My body was awake, but my mind lagged behind in a fog of disbelief. I kept telling myself, maybe this was before things got bad. Maybe she slipped up once or twice. Maybe there's an explanation. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The problem wasn't whether she did it, it was how much. Around noon, my best friend, Marcus, texted me. "You okay?" I know it was a lot. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I need the rest of it. He didn't ask questions. He just told me to come over. Walking to his apartment felt like walking into a battlefield I never asked to join. Marcus lived 2 blocks away, and every person I passed made me feel exposed. Like they knew. Like everyone had known but me. The whispers I heard after I got home suddenly made sense now. People didn't know how to face me because they had watched my life fall apart and said nothing. When I knocked on Marcus's door, he opened it with a look I could only describe as heartbreak. Not pity. Heartbreak. Like watching someone you love drown and not being able to pull them out. He had his laptop open on the table, a folder pulled up with dozens of files, screenshots, recordings, saved messages, and videos. All evidence. All painful. All things he'd been keeping from me, because he knew the day would come when I'd need the truth. "Sit," he said quietly. I did. He clicked on the first video. It was from a club. Flashing lights, loud music in the background. And there she was, my wife, dressed in a way she never dressed with me. Hair done, makeup flawless, body moving like she didn't have a care in the world. Behind her was a younger guy, probably early 20s, holding the waist that used to be mine. Kissing her neck. My heart dropped. I had to pause the video to breathe. The next file was a voice note she sent to one of her friends. Her voice, her same warm, soft voice, talking about how she deserves to have fun because being a prison wife is basically being single anyway. I felt something inside me break. Marcus played another clip. This one hurt more than all the others combined. My wife at a club table, throwing money into the air. Not a lot, but enough that I recognized it. I remembered exactly when I had sent that money. I remembered how long I worked in prison to earn it. How she told me she needed it for groceries and school supplies. My hands shook. My stomach twisted. Why didn't anyone tell me? I whispered. Marcus sighed, rubbing his palms over his face. Bro, people tried. But she shut it down. Said anyone who talked was trying to break up her family. She threatened to cut people off. What about my kids? I asked. Did she at least, was she taking care of them? He looked away for a second. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. Your kids were fed, he finally said. But that money you sent didn't go where you thought. Your oldest, he told me sometimes they had to stay at neighbors' houses at night because she had company coming over. Company? Not even real enough for her to call them what they were. Then he showed me the text between her and the guys she slept with. Seeing her type words like that, words she never even said to me, felt like swallowing glass. Flirty messages, hotel links, meet me here, come over tonight. And worst of all, she slept with 4 of my friends. Names I recognized. People I trusted. People I had defended in fights, shared meals with, grown up beside. When Marcus clicked on the final folder, labeled home, I felt the room spin. These are the ones I didn't want to show you, he said, voice low. But you need to see them. They were videos. Recorded outside my house. Some by neighbors, some from street cameras. Men coming to my home late at night. More than once. Staying until morning. One video showed my youngest daughter, barely old enough to talk, opening the front door for a man I had never seen before. She hugged his leg like she knew him well. I had to look away. That's enough, I said, standing abruptly. But the images were already burned into my memory. I felt physically sick. Marcus stood too. Man, listen. I didn't want to be the one to show you. I wish to God someone else had stopped this before it got this far. But you were in prison. You couldn't see what was happening. And she changed. Or maybe she just revealed who she really was. I wiped my face with my hands, and to my surprise, they were wet. I hadn't realized I'd been crying. I supported her, I said quietly. I sent everything I had. I made sure the kids were okay. I stayed loyal. I tried to be a father even from prison. Marcus nodded. I know. Everybody knows. But I couldn't finish the sentence. The words just wouldn't come. He put a hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, man. I truly am. But now that you're out, you can fix this. You can protect your kids. You can move forward. Move forward. Easier said than done. When I walked out of his apartment, the world felt louder than usual. Cars passing. Kids yelling. Dogs barking. Everything was moving like normal, while I felt like I was slowly crumbling. I went in my car and sat there for almost an hour, staring through the windshield, replaying everything in my head. The videos. The messages. The men in my home. My kids seeing things they should never have seen. My wife spending money I worked for behind bars. Money I earned in the worst place imaginable, just to party and sleep around. By the time I drove home, I was no longer numb. I was angry. I was hurt. I was broken. And worst of all, I no longer recognized the life I had walked back into. That night, as I sat on the edge of my bed alone, I realized something. The person I had been married to didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. And the betrayal I felt was only the beginning of what was coming. I didn't want to go home after seeing the videos, but I had to. My kids were there, and if there was one thing I promised myself in prison, it was that I'd never abandon them again, no matter how broken I felt. When I walked through the door, my youngest ran to me first. She wrapped her tiny arms around my leg like she always did and said, "Daddy, you're home." Her voice, innocent, bright, hit me harder than any punch ever could. For a moment, I forgot the pain, the betrayal, the images seared into my mind. For a moment, I just held her and let myself breathe. But then I saw my two older kids standing behind her. My son, 9 years old, looked at me with this expression I couldn't read, confusion, maybe fear. My daughter, 7, avoided my eyes completely. Kids may not understand adult problems, but they feel tension like heat. They knew something was wrong. They had known long before I found out. I sat them all down on the couch. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep my voice calm. They had already been through too much: prison visits, sudden changes, nights without their mom home. "I want to talk to you," I said gently, "just to make sure you guys are okay." My son shifted uncomfortably. "Are you and Mommy fighting?" he asked. I swallowed. "No one is fighting. I just need to understand what happened while I was gone." My daughter finally looked up at me, her eyes wide and honest in a way only kids' eyes can be. "Daddy," she whispered, "are you mad at Mommy?" That question ripped into me. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because the answer was complicated. I wasn't just mad. I was disappointed, hurt, betrayed. But none of that was my kid's burden to carry. "I'm not mad at you guys," I said softly. "And I'm here now. That's what matters." My son took a deep breath, the way kids do when they're scared of saying something wrong. "Sometimes, Mommy had friends over," he finally said. My stomach tightened. "What kind of friends?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He shrugged. "Just men. Mommy said they were helping with stuff, fixing things. But they didn't fix anything." My daughter added quietly, "One of them slept in your room." My chest caved in. My room. My bed. The place my wife and I built our life. "Did Mommy say anything to you about it?" I asked. My daughter nodded hesitantly. She said it was grown-up stuff and not to tell anyone. I had to close my eyes for a second, not to hide anger. Anger wasn't even the strongest emotion at that point. It was grief. Pure grief. My children had been taught to keep secrets. They had watched men come into their home, into rooms they weren't supposed to be in. They were confused, scared, unsure of what was normal. They deserved stability. They deserved innocence. They deserved better than all of this. I tried to smile at them, even though it felt impossible. Thank you for telling me. You didn't do anything wrong. I love you all more than anything, okay? They nodded, and my youngest climbed into my lap, hugging me tightly as if she sensed I needed it. My wife came home an hour later. She walked in with fast steps, like she knew something was up. When she saw me sitting with the kids, her eyes narrowed just a little. "Can we talk in private?" she asked. I stood up slowly. Sure. We went to the bedroom, where one of those men had slept, and the second I closed the door, she crossed her arms defensively. "You talked to Marcus," she said flatly. I didn't answer. Not yet. I was looking at her like she was a stranger, wearing my wife's face. She scoffed. "Let me guess, he showed you videos. Screenshots. Whatever. That man has always had a problem with me." I finally spoke. "I saw you in clubs, pouring drinks for guys, throwing them money I sent." She didn't respond, didn't deny it. She just rolled her eyes. "You don't understand what it was like," she said. "I was alone. I had 3 kids. I was stressed. I needed a break." "A break," I repeated quietly. "That's what you call cheating? Bringing strangers into our house? Sleeping with my friends?" She flinched at that one. "You don't know what I went through. I was in prison." I snapped before I could stop myself. "And I still found ways to support you." Marcus sighed, rubbing his palms over his face. "Bro, people tried. But she shut it down. Said anyone who talked was trying to break up her family. She threatened to cut people off." "What about my kids?" I asked. "Did she at least, was she taking care of them?" He looked away for a second, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. "Your kids were fed," he finally said. "But that money you sent didn't go where you thought. Your oldest, he told me sometimes they had to stay at neighbors' houses at night because she had company coming over." Company? Not even real enough for her to call them what they were. Then he showed me the text between her and the guys she slept with. Seeing her type words like that, words she never even said to me, felt like swallowing glass. Flirty messages, hotel links, "Meet me here. Come over tonight." And worst of all, she slept with 4 of my friends. Names I recognized. People I trusted. People I had defended in fights, shared meals with, grown up beside. When Marcus clicked on the final folder, labeled Home, I felt the room spin. "These are the ones I didn't want to show you," he said, voice low. "But you need to see them." They were videos, recorded outside my house. Some by neighbors, some from street cameras. Men coming to my home late at night. More than once. Staying until morning. One video showed my youngest daughter, barely old enough to talk, opening the front door for a man I had never seen before. She hugged his leg like she knew him well. I had to look away. "That's enough," I said, standing abruptly. But the images were already burned into my memory. I felt physically sick. Marcus stood too. "Man, listen. I didn't want to be the one to show you. I wish to God someone else had stopped this before it got this far. But you were in prison. You couldn't see what was happening. And she changed. Or maybe she just revealed who she really was." I wiped my face with my hands, and to my surprise, they were wet. I hadn't realized I'd been crying. "I supported her," I said quietly. "I sent everything I had. I made sure the kids were okay. I stayed loyal. I tried to be a father even from prison." Marcus nodded. "I know. Everybody knows. But I couldn't finish the sentence. The words just wouldn't come. He put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, man. I truly am. But now that you're out, you can fix this. You can protect your kids. You can move forward." Move forward. Easier said than done. When I walked out of his apartment, the world felt louder than usual. Cars passing. Kids yelling. Dogs barking. Everything was moving like normal, while I felt like I was slowly crumbling. I went in my car and sat there for almost an hour, staring through the windshield, replaying everything in my head. The videos. The messages. The men in my home. My kids seeing things they should never have seen. My wife spending money I worked for behind bars. Money I earned in the worst place imaginable, just to party and sleep around. By the time I drove home, I was no longer numb. I was angry. I was hurt. I was broken. And worst of all, I no longer recognized the life I had walked back into. That night, as I sat on the edge of my bed alone, I realized something. The person I had been married to didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. And the betrayal I felt was only the beginning of what was coming. I didn't want to go home after seeing the videos, but I had to. My kids were there, and if there was one thing I promised myself in prison, it was that I'd never abandon them again, no matter how broken I felt. When I walked through the door, my youngest ran to me first. She wrapped her tiny arms around my leg like she always did and said, "Daddy, you're home." Her voice, innocent, bright, hit me harder than any punch ever could. For a moment, I forgot the pain, the betrayal, the images seared into my mind. For a moment, I just held her and let myself breathe. But then I saw my two older kids standing behind her. My son, 9 years old, looked at me with this expression I couldn't read, confusion, maybe fear. My daughter, 7, avoided my eyes completely. Kids may not understand adult problems, but they feel tension like heat. They knew something was wrong. They had known long before I found out. I sat them all down on the couch. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep my voice calm. They had already been through too much: prison visits, sudden changes, nights without their mom home. "I want to talk to you," I said gently, "just to make sure you guys are okay." My son shifted uncomfortably. "Are you and Mommy fighting?" he asked. I swallowed. "No one is fighting. I just need to understand what happened while I was gone." My daughter finally looked up at me, her eyes wide and honest in a way only kids' eyes can be. "Daddy," she whispered, "are you mad at Mommy?" That question ripped into me. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because the answer was complicated. I wasn't just mad. I was disappointed, hurt, betrayed. But none of that was my kid's burden to carry. "I'm not mad at you guys," I said softly. "And I'm here now. That's what matters." My son took a deep breath, the way kids do when they're scared of saying something wrong. "Sometimes, Mommy had friends over," he finally said. My stomach tightened. "What kind of friends?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He shrugged. "Just men. Mommy said they were helping with stuff, fixing things. But they didn't fix anything." My daughter added quietly, "One of them slept in your room." My chest caved in. My room. My bed. The place my wife and I built our life. "Did Mommy say anything to you about it?" I asked. My daughter nodded hesitantly. She said it was grown-up stuff and not to tell anyone. I had to close my eyes for a second, not to hide anger. Anger wasn't even the strongest emotion at that point. It was grief. Pure grief. My children had been taught to keep secrets. They had watched men come into their home, into rooms they weren't supposed to be in. They were confused, scared, unsure of what was normal. They deserved stability. They deserved innocence. They deserved better than all of this. I tried to smile at them, even though it felt impossible. "Thank you for telling me. You didn't do anything wrong. I love you all more than anything, okay?" They nodded, and my youngest climbed into my lap, hugging me tightly as if she sensed I needed it. My wife came home an hour later. She walked in with fast steps, like she knew something was up. When she saw me sitting with the kids, her eyes narrowed just a little. "Can we talk in private?" she asked. I stood up slowly. "Sure." We went to the bedroom, where one of those men had slept, and the second I closed the door, she crossed her arms defensively. "You talked to Marcus," she said flatly. I didn't answer. Not yet. I was looking at her like she was a stranger, wearing my wife's face. She scoffed. "Let me guess, he showed you videos. Screenshots. Whatever. That man has always had a problem with me." I finally spoke. "I saw you in clubs, pouring drinks for guys, throwing them money I sent." She didn't respond, didn't deny it. She just rolled her eyes. "You don't understand what it was like," she said. "I was alone. I had 3 kids. I was stressed. I needed a break." "A break," I repeated quietly. "That's what you call cheating? Bringing strangers into our house? Sleeping with my friends?" She flinched at that one. "You don't know what I went through. I was in prison." I snapped before I could stop myself. "And I still found ways to support you." I packed a few clothes, my documents, and left. Walking out of that house, my house, hurt in a way I can't describe. But staying would have hurt more. Once I moved into a small rental room, everything hit me like a flood. The betrayal,
The shame.
the guilt, the sense of failure. I sat on that cheap mattress, head in my hands, feeling like the world had collapsed under me. It wasn't just losing her. It was losing the life I thought I had. The trust one thought existed. The family I thought was solid. And the worst part? The kids didn't deserve any of it. I promised myself then, right there in that tiny room, that no matter how broken I was, I would not let this break them too. But I had no idea how hard the road ahead would be. The morning of the hearing felt unreal. For months, everything in my life had revolved around one goal: protecting my inheritance and exposing my ex for what he had done. Now it was all coming to a head. I arrived early, dressed simply but confidently, every document tucked neatly into my folder. My lawyer gave me a reassuring nod as I entered the building. "You've done everything right. Just tell the truth." Truth. That was the one advantage I had that he never did. When my ex finally walked in, pretending to be calm, his eyes widened the moment he noticed the stack of evidence on the table: video recordings, travel logs, financial statements, messages he thought I'd deleted forever. For the first time, he didn't have that smug confidence. He wouldn't look me in the eye. The judge began the hearing. My ex tried to twist the story, claiming the skydiving incident was an accident, that he was panicking and lost balance. He even attempted to put on a grieving act, saying he'd been traumatized ever since. But then my lawyer played the recording. His voice. His confession. His plan to secure my inheritance for himself. He froze. The judge stared at him with raised eyebrows, the room falling completely silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. He tried to interrupt, but the judge shut him down immediately. The more evidence we presented, the more frantic he became. At some point, his confidence broke completely. He started contradicting his own lies, his voice shaking as he tried to explain messages that clearly showed intent. By the time it was over, the truth stood clear as day. The judge ruled in my favor instantly, my inheritance protected, his claims dismissed, and a notice filed for the authorities to take over the criminal side of the situation. My lawyer leaned over and whispered, "You won." When we stepped outside, sunlight hit my face like a blessing I had been waiting for. Months of fear, anger, and sleepless nights lifted off my shoulders all at once. I felt free. Not just from him, but from the guilt I had carried since the incident. I took a deep breath and walked away from the courthouse without looking back. Whatever happened to him next was out of my hands. Justice had already begun its work. And for the first time since everything started, I felt like I finally had my life back. Life felt strangely quiet after the hearing. No more court dates. No more strategy meetings. No more sleepless nights wondering what he might try next. For the first time in a long while, my days were my own again. But healing doesn't happen instantly. Some mornings, I still woke up expecting chaos. My mind had gotten too used to surviving instead of living. Yet every day, I pushed a little further into my new life, one where I finally had control. I started small. A solo breakfast at my favorite cafe. A walk through the park without constantly checking behind me. A long overdue visit to my parents' resting place. Standing there, I felt a wave of emotion hit me. Not sadness, but gratitude. "I made it," I whispered. "I didn't let your legacy fall into the wrong hands." For the first time, the ache in my chest softened. It didn't go away, but it changed into something gentler. With the inheritance secured, I began rebuilding the dreams I once put on pause. I met with financial planners, updated security, and created plans for the future I had almost lost. And slowly, I started imagining happiness again. One afternoon, while organizing documents, I found an old letter from my dad. The handwriting was familiar, steady, comforting. The message inside was simple. Don't ever let fear stop you from living the life you are meant for. It felt like a sign. So I took the biggest step yet. I booked a real vacation. Somewhere peaceful, warm, and far away from anything that reminded me of the past. No drama, no danger, just me starting over. On the plane, as I watched the clouds through the window, a small smile crept across my face. I wasn't running anymore. I was moving forward. What happened to my ex after the court ruling? That became a background detail in a story that was no longer about him. Justice moved at its own pace, and I didn't need to track every update. My life wasn't tied to his consequences anymore. This new chapter was mine, and mine alone. As the plane lifted into the sky, I closed my eyes and let myself imagine the future, one where I healed fully, lived boldly, and honored my parents by living a life filled with intention, not fear. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful, and that hope was stronger than anything he had ever taken from me. Healing is not a straight line. Some days I woke up steady, focused, almost proud of how far I'd come. And some nights, everything I had been pushing down came crashing back. Chapter 7 was one of those nights. It started small. Just a moment. Me washing dishes while the kids watched TV in the living room. A normal evening. Peaceful. Quiet. Then one of my sons laughed. It was innocent, pure, but something about the sound hit me wrong. It reminded me of the videos. Those nights, she took men out using the money I sent home. Those same nights my kids were just a room away. Those same laughs she ignored while she lived a double life. I froze. A plate slipped from my hand and clattered into the sink. The noise startled the kids. "Dad, you okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, buddy. Just tired." But inside I felt like a dam had cracked. I sent the kids to bed early and sat alone in the quiet apartment. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort you, it interrogates you, confronts you with every question you've been avoiding. How did I survive prison just to walk into a heartbreak worse than anything inside those walls? How did she throw everything away? How did my friends betray me with her? How did I miss every sign? I felt the weight hit me all at once. Everything I bottled up, anger, humiliation, grief, disappointment, confusion, it all surged. I wanted answers I would never get. I wanted closure she was too selfish to give. I wanted to understand why loyalty meant something to me, but nothing to her. But what hurt the most wasn't the cheating. It wasn't the videos. It wasn't even my friends. It was the house. My home, my kid's safe place, tainted. Used like some cheap rental whenever she ran low on money. Then slipping in and out while my children slept in the next room. That thought broke something inside me. I put my head in my hands and let myself finally feel all of it. Not just the anger, not just the betrayal, but the grief. Because this wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the death of the life I thought I had. And somewhere in all that pain, a truth surfaced. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was exhausted. Bone deep exhausted. I had carried everyone. My family. My responsibilities. My dignity through prison. My kids after everything crumbled. My sanity when every whisper in the neighborhood tried to break me. I sat in that loneliness for a long time. Not drowning. Not spiraling. Just acknowledging. Acknowledging that I had been hurt in ways I didn't even have language for yet. But here's the thing. As the night stretched on, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't magical. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. A simple, gentle truth. I am still here. Everything she did, every betrayal, every humiliation, none of it destroyed me. It wounded me deeply, yes. But I was still standing. And in that moment, I realized something else. I wasn't healing for her. I wasn't healing to prove anything to anyone. I was healing for me, for my kids, for the life that still had value, even after being shattered. That long, painful night became a turning point. Not because the pain vanished, but because for the first time, I allowed myself to feel it. And that was the first real step toward letting it go. If you had told me a year earlier that I'd ever feel peace again, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a strange way of rebuilding you piece by piece in moments so small you hardly notice them happening. Chapter 8 began on a Saturday morning. The kids were helping clean the apartment. Music playing, sunlight pouring through the windows, cereal bowls on the table. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. But for the first time, I looked around and thought, this is my home now. My real home. A place where no lies walked through the door. No strangers were snuck in. No chaos hung in the air. Just me and my children, making a life that finally felt honest. I didn't know it then, but that was the start of my closure. A part of me still felt haunted by the humiliation. The betrayal from the woman I almost died protecting. The friends I trusted who turned around and treated my marriage like a joke. The videos. The stories. The whispers. All of it left scars. But I started learning something important. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about taking away its power. And every day it hurt a little less. I stopped checking her social media. Stopped asking mutual friends what she was doing. Stopped letting my imagination torture me with what-ifs. Because the truth was simple. Everything she did said more about her than it ever said about me. I had been loyal. I had been responsible. I had protected my family even from inside a prison cell. She made her choices. And now I was making mine. One quiet afternoon, my oldest child sat next to me on the couch. "Dad," he asked softly, "are we going to be okay?" He wasn't talking about money. He wasn't talking about school. He wasn't talking about the divorce. He was talking about us, our hearts, our future, our family. And for the first time, I didn't lie to protect him. I smiled and said, "Yeah, we're going to be more than okay." Because in that moment, I realized something that completely changed my perspective. My kids weren't just part of my healing. They were the reason I hadn't fallen apart. They grounded me, anchored me, reminded me that I was still needed, still important, still enough. Months later, I walked past the mirror on my way to work. Something made me stop and look. I didn't look broken anymore. I didn't look defeated. I didn't see the man who walked out of prison and into betrayal. I saw a father, a survivor, a man who rebuilds instead of ruins, a man who chooses his children over revenge, a man who survived the darkest version of love and walked out stronger, not bitter. And that's when I realized, closure is not something you wait for, it's something you create. She may never apologize. She may never admit the truth. She may never understand what she destroyed. But that's no longer my burden. I had rebuilt my life without her. And that was the greatest revenge I could ever claim. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day I'll open my heart again. Maybe not. But for now, I'm focusing on the things I can control. Providing for my kids. Building a peaceful home. Growing into a man who refuses to let the past define him. Choosing joy, even on the days when it feels unfamiliar. And slowly, quietly, steadily, I'm becoming proud of myself again. My story didn't end in betrayal. It didn't end in pain. It didn't end in anger. It ended in survival, and a new beginning I built with my own hands. And that is enough. What will you do in a situation like? Drop your comment. I used to believe I was one of the lucky ones. I was 29, financially stable, had my own apartment, a stable nursing job, and a healthy social life. The only thing I didn't have was a real connection with someone. Not the shallow dating apps, not the quick coffee dates, not the empty promises. Something real. Then he found me. We met online. A simple message from a handsome man in West Africa. His words were warm, thoughtful, respectful. He didn't come off pushy or aggressive. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in knowing me. Every conversation felt like a soft place to land after a long workday. Within weeks, we were talking every night. Within months, I felt like I was building something solid, something many people never find. He called me my queen. He'd stay awake just to talk me through tough days at work. He'd remind me to eat, rest, sleep. He'd tell me, "When I come over there, you will never lift a finger." Looking back, the signs were there. But love has a way of painting red flags white. When he told me he wanted a future with me, I believed him. When he said America would give him better opportunities, I believed that too. And when he asked if I could help bring him here, I didn't question it. I wanted to give him a chance. So I did it. I filed the paperwork. I covered the fees. I even stopped taking extra shifts to spend more time talking to him. My friends warned me, "Move slow. Don't trust too fast. You barely know him." But I thought they were being negative. I thought I found a man who saw me, valued me, adored me. When he finally arrived in the United States, he stood at the airport smiling like I hung the moon. He hugged me like he never wanted to let go. And I swear, that night, when he looked around the apartment, he had tears in his eyes. "This is home," he told me. And I believed him. The first 3 months felt like a dream. He cooked. He cleaned. He handled every chore. He made sure I rested after 12-hour shifts. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He made me feel cherished. People at work envied me. "You found a unicorn. Where did you pick this one from?" He's husband material. I used to laugh and say, "God blessed me." But God wasn't the one writing this story. Something else was. Our immigration appointment was coming up soon. He was anxious but excited. I reassured him constantly it would go well. He would get his papers. He would finally be able to work. I didn't know that the appointment wasn't the beginning of our life together. It was the end. On a random Tuesday morning, I left for work like usual, coffee in hand, keys in my bag, hair rushed into a bun. I was halfway down the highway when I realized I forgot an important document I needed to submit that day. Annoyed, I turned around. That single U-turn was the moment my entire life snapped into two. When I opened the front door quietly, I planned to run in, grab the folder from my desk, and leave. But then, I froze. His voice echoed from the living room. He was on the phone, on speaker, laughing. "Don't worry, baby," he said in a tone I had never heard him use with me. 2 more days, and that Magoo woman will take me to the immigration appointment. As soon as I get the document, I'm done. My heart stopped. He continued, still laughing. "I told you once I get my papers, I will come back for you and the kids. Junior will finally go to school here. Just hold on." The woman on the other end giggled and said, "They've gone to school already. Don't forget us." "I can never forget you," he said. "But let me get these papers from this fool first." This fool. This Magoo. Me. I felt my stomach flip. My breathing went shallow. My hands started shaking. This man who kissed my forehead every night. This man who washed my clothes. This man who told me I was the love of his life. Had a whole family. Kids. A woman calling them our children. A plan to abandon me as soon as immigration approved him. I wasn't a wife. I was a stepping stone. I wasn't a queen. I was a visa sponsor. I wasn't loved. I was used. I backed away quietly, left the apartment, and sat in my car staring at the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. Something in me shut down. Completely. And in that numb, hollow silence, I decided he would not win. That day, without saying a word to him, I drove straight to the police station, walked in, and calmly explained everything. By the time I finished, they were already preparing a case. He had no idea. And I had no intention of warning him. The police didn't laugh. They didn't brush me off or tell me I was being dramatic. They listened. Carefully. Seriously. Professionally. Because this wasn't just a relationship problem. This was immigration fraud. A federal crime. And I had proof. The phone call. The identity of the woman he called my wife. The kids he called my sons. The immigration appointment coming up in 48 hours. The officer looked me straight in the eye and said, "Ma'am, you did the right thing coming here." Those words alone kept me from falling apart. By the end of the meeting, a formal case had been logged. The officer explained the process. They would monitor the immigration appointment. He would be detained before he had a chance to leave the building. He would be questioned. He would likely be charged. And, depending on the evidence and his statements, he could be deported immediately. My hands were shaking, but I nodded at every step. I had done everything right. I had followed every law. He had not. Now, the consequences were his to face, not mine to carry. When I got home that evening, he greeted me at the door like nothing happened. "Baby, you're back early. I made your favorite soup. Sit down, relax." I looked at him, really looked at him. His smile, his gentle voice, his pretend tenderness. Knowing what I knew, it all felt like a costume he wore so well it almost fooled me again. He wasn't my husband. He was an actor. And his performance was about to end. I played along. Ate. Smiled. Nodded. Let him massage my shoulders. Let him talk about our future. He had no idea that his future was already written, and it didn't include me or America. That night, while he slept curled up beside me, I stared at the ceiling. Half of me wanted to cry. The other half was too numb. But floating somewhere in the middle was a single, unshakable truth. I deserved better than this. Better than being used. Better than being tricked. Better than being someone's ticket out of poverty. Better than being lied to, betrayed, manipulated, humiliated. I didn't sleep at all. The morning of the immigration appointment arrived. He was excited, smiling, humming, dressing like he was attending a wedding. "Baby," he said proudly. "After today, we celebrate. We'll finally have everything." I forced a smile. "You're right. Everything gets decided today." He kissed my hand. If only he knew. At the immigration office, things moved quickly. We walked inside together. He kept holding my hand, squeezing it like a man who is deeply in love. But the entire time, his other hand kept checking his phone, texting the woman he called my wife. The officers were already waiting. 2 plainclothed agents approached us just as we were called to the window. "Sir, can we speak with you in this room for a moment?" He looked confused but followed them with a polite nod. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then suddenly, I heard yelling from behind the closed door. "What is this? Why are you detaining me?" I didn't do anything. The agents came out first. Then him. In handcuffs. He saw me standing there, and his entire face collapsed. Baby, what's going on?" "Tell them this is a mistake. Why aren't you saying anything?" I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply looked at him the same way he had looked at me, as someone who had no idea who was standing in front of them. One agent said, "Sir, you are under investigation for immigration fraud." His eyes widened in horror. Baby, tell them I love you. Tell them we're married." I stayed silent. Because he didn't love me. He loved what I could do for him. And now? That illusion had shattered. They escorted him out of the building, yelling, begging, trying to twist away from the cuffs. He kept calling my name, but I didn't answer. I walked out to the parking lot alone, breathing deeper than I had in months. Within hours, things moved fast. His visa application was canceled. His pending green card was denied. His immigration status was revoked. And by the next morning, he was on a plane, deported back to the same trenches he schemed to escape. I didn't see him again. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because the moment his plane touched down in Africa, the phone calls started. His family, his uncles, his cousins, his real wife. All of them preaching forgiveness, quoting Bible verses, calling me wicked, calling me heartless, calling me the one who broke the home. The same family that raised a man who used me like a tool. They wanted mercy, but what they never showed me was honesty. The days after his deportation were quiet. Too quiet, in a way that felt strange after months of deception, lies, and tension. I woke up the morning after he left and didn't know what to do with myself. For so long, my life had revolved around him, loving him, supporting him, anticipating his arrival, fearing his plans, and suddenly, he was gone. Permanently. The apartment felt empty. The space where I had once shared coffee, laughter, and chores now seemed hollow. And yet there was relief there too. Relief that the man I had loved wasn't real. Relief that the life I had built for us, me working long hours, paying his way, was finally mine to reclaim. Relief that I had acted in time, in control, and avoided being trapped further. Then the calls began. His family. Uncles, aunts, cousins, even the woman he had children with. All of them wanted forgiveness. All of them preached the Bible. All of them wanted me to show mercy and restore the family. Some called angry. Some called disappointed in me. Some whispered guilt like it was my fault their son or brother had been caught. Every call was like a punch in the stomach. I started screening numbers. I stopped answering most. I wanted nothing to do with people who condoned deceit. People who raised a man to lie, manipulate, and use a woman who gave him everything. People who thought preaching forgiveness erased years of betrayal. It wasn't just the fraud that hurt. It was the truth I had ignored for months. The reality that the man who cooked for me, cleaned for me, pampered me was pretending. Every smile, every gentle word, every thoughtful gesture had a purpose, to get what he wanted. I remembered the little things, the way he always made sure I was comfortable, the way he never let me lift a finger, the way he seemed devoted. And then I remembered the phone call, the laughter, the promises to someone else, the calm plan to abandon me. And I realized something. He had never really adored me. He had adored my ability to help him. I decided I couldn't let this define me. I wasn't going to be the victim he thought I was. I wasn't going to let fear, shame, or regret steal my happiness. I started small. I cooked for myself without thinking of him. I walked through the city, listening to music I loved. I treated myself to things I had put off, new clothes, long baths, a small vacation to reset my mind. Then I started rebuilding my sense of self. Therapy helped me untangle the trauma of trust and betrayal. Friends reminded me that I was not at fault. Family reminded me that love should never feel like manipulation. Each day, I reclaimed a little more of me. By the end of the month, I realized I had grown stronger than I ever imagined. I learned that charisma can be dangerous when paired with deceit. That trust should be earned, not assumed. That love does not require sacrifice of your dignity or safety. That some people will lie beautifully, and that's their flaw, not yours. And most importantly, forgiveness is optional, self-respect is mandatory. One evening, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker below. No calls, no lies, no manipulation. Just me, breathing, alive, and free. I thought about the man who used me, laughed at me, and plotted to leave me behind. I thought about his family preaching forgiveness while condoning his actions. And I smiled, not bitterly, not cruelly, but softly, because I had already forgiven myself, and I didn't need their approval. The real triumph wasn't the police, the deportation, or the case being closed. The real triumph was me standing in my own power, reclaiming my life, and never letting anyone make me feel small again. I knew the scars would remain. The memories would linger. But I also knew one truth. I survived. I thrived. And I would never be a pawn in someone else's game again. If you enjoyed this story and want more true-life drama, revenge tales, and shocking secrets, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Drop a comment below and let me know, what would you do in this situation?